Today's podcast is sponsored by the Association of Mature American Citizens. Guys, it's the only conservative alternative to AARP. Go to amac.us/Carter. I'm excited about today's show because I have my good friend, Attorney General Mark Brnovich, on the show again today. He is a fighter. I love the fact that he's Attorney General. I tell him this all the time because he is always leading a battle. Right? He's going into battle. He's fighting against the mandates. He's fighting for our rights. He's holding people accountable, especially the Biden administration, for what's going on at the border. We're going to be talking to him about all of this and so much more, even what happened with James O'Keefe. I mean, and as you know, being here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I am, right there at the front lines of what's going on with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. But it's good to get that kind of perspective from a prosecutor, Mark Brnovich, a former prosecutor as well. He is able to give us that kind of perspective that we need. And we're going to go into details about Kyle Rittenhouse and why this trial is so important, not only for what's happening here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, but across our nation. You guys, please follow and subscribe and get all the links that you need for at my website, saracarter.com. That's all social media links. If you want to stay up on all the stories, everything that we're doing here, even with Radio America and the podcast, you're going to get them at saracarter.com. The website's great. It's been revamped. It's actually beautiful. We got some great staff writers there, and we are really, really excited about this coming year, what we're going to be doing for you. And while you're there, I want you to sign up again for that email list so that you and I don't get shadow banned from one another, because we know what we've had to put up with, right, over the last several years with being shadow banned by Jack and Twitter and all the craziness with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. We don't want that to happen again. Folks, you can get all the great discounts as well on all my pillow products. I love my pillow. I love what Mike Lindell has done with this company. And I love the fact that he is a true American patriot. If you go to mypillow.com right now and you click on the radio listeners special, you've got to go to radio listeners specials. You'll get deep discounts on all my pillow, mattress toppers, towels, and so much more. They have slippers, dog beds, and even high quality weight blankets. For example, Mike is offering a buy one, get one free offer on the Giza Dream Sheets. I love those. I am always bragging about those. They're great. They're wonderful. They're soft. They're durable. I mean, it's an all-around great sheet. All my pillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. All my pillow products are made 100% in the USA. So go to mypillow.com. You click on the radio listener specials for the buy one, get one free offer on the Giza Dream Sheets, right? Enter the promo code Carter, CARTER, or call 1-800-685-7221 for great My Pillow specials. That's 1-800-685-7221. Be sure to use the promo code Carter at checkout. So here in Kenosha, exciting news. The one thing that couldn't have made this even weirder, this whole trial that has been like this crazy roller coaster, MSNBC, or as my good friend Sean Hannity likes to call it, the MSDNC, has officially been thrown out of the courthouse after a reporter was allegedly caught following the jury bus as it was leaving the courthouse. You guys, this is absolutely unbelievable. What I don't even want to say what I feel right now, because MSNBC has been literally with Joy Reid, everything that's going on, been pushing out lie after lie after lie on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. It is devastating to see what is happening here. I want you to listen to this, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about it a little bit more, because we're going to ask Attorney General Mark Brnovich about what his thoughts are on it. But I want you to hear what the judge has to say and how he basically banned MSNBC from the courthouse for the rest of the trial. They are not allowed back in there. They have been punished. The Punisher has arrived, and it was Bruce Schroeder, the judge at the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Listen to this.
A person who identified himself as James G. Morrison and who claimed that he was a producer with NBC News, employed for MSNBC, and under the supervision of a person. What's going on? Oh, okay. Under the supervision of someone named Irene Bayan in New York, for MSNBC. The police, when they stopped him because he was following at a distance of about a block and went through a red light, pulled him over and inquired of him what was going on, and he gave that information and stated that he had been instructed by Ms. Bayan in New York to follow the jury bus. I have instructed that no one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of this trial.
So MSNBC or MSDNC, however you guys want to call it, news, admits that the incident did take place. They admitted it. But now they're claiming that the employee following the jury bus was a freelancer, so a loophole in the system. We never contacted or intended to contact the jurors during the deliberations and never photographed or intended to photograph them. Then why were you following them? They're such liars. They think we're idiots. They think that we fell off the turnip truck yesterday, whatever that means. My dad used to say that, a turnip truck. I hope that's not like some kind of woke thing that I'm going to get in trouble for now. But we did not fall off that turnip truck yesterday. Okay, MSDNC, we know exactly what you're trying to do. You were trying to follow them. You were trying to find out who they were. You're trying to set up interviews for after the trial. You were doing all of that craziness that you should not be doing, because this is a very sensitive time. A very sensitive time. Kyle Rittenhouse is facing life imprisonment for defending himself, in front of a mob of people. But still, there is a process that is taking place, and it is in a courtroom where it should be taking place. We shouldn't be instigating as journalists or in the media. We shouldn't be instigating people in communities to fight one another. We shouldn't be following jurors home and intimidating them, because that's what I believe happens. I would be intimidated if I was a juror and there was an MSDNC, quote unquote freelancer who quote unquote was never contacted by anyone, even though he said he was. Believe me, he was, following my jury bus home. Embarrassing, wrong, all the way wrong. It's a shame that I, as a former full-on journalist, and now I'm a columnist investigator, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of what's happened in the media. It's wrong, and I'm glad MSDNC was thrown out. Look, what about the CBP? What's going on right now with U.S. Customs and Border Protection? What's happening on our border? While we're all focused here, you guys, I was just at the border, and I am telling you that there is a situation brewing over there, not over only the vaccine mandates, right? Not only over the vaccine mandates, but over what the Biden administration has done to our border. And it's basically destroyed our security. And I'm not over exaggerating this. I could tell you, talking to Border Patrol agents, talking to Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, we are at a crisis at the border. And the fact that the Biden administration wants to go even further, and I'm going to ask Mark Brnovich about this as well, but wants to go even further and pay $450,000 per person plus for illegal trespass. There's criminal trespassing laws because families were separated, because the Trump administration wanted to make sure that children were protected. And now we're going to pay these people who crossed and broke the law $450,000 plus dollars. That's even an idea in their head. How insane is that? I wonder if they do that for us. What about if somebody's arrested, right? Like an American's arrested, they're separated from their child because, they were drunk driving or there was a criminal trespass charge. Are we going to pay that American $450,000 because they were separated from their child? Yeah, I don't think so. Well, Mark Brnovich is also leading state opposition to the mandates. And I'm going to be talking to him about that. Those are the vaccine mandates. Remember the job or jab mandates. And I have that story. If you guys all want to check it out, go to saracarter.com. It lists it out exactly what's happening with these lawsuits. And he brings up so many incredible arguments in these lawsuits. You really have to look them over because this, let me just say it this way. This is about our individual rights and freedoms, but this is about our freedoms as a whole, as a nation, what our Constitution stands for, what the powers of the executive branch are, and what those powers should not be. And how when we give away like a little bit of the law, we give away just a small portion of our rights, we think, okay, well, why doesn't everybody just get the jab, right? Why don't we just accept that and make sure everybody does it? Well, because other things come into play. This is not just about thinking that you're doing what's right is right. It's about knowing what you're doing could turn our nation upside down on its head. Something as simple as mandating this jab. And I think Mark Brnovich, the Attorney General, explains that very, very well. And if you go on our website, saracarter.com, you'll be able to see it there for yourself. We have a great story there that kind of lays it all out for you. But the reason I don't want to jump into all those details yet until we get into the interview is because I was talking to Rich and to Greg, the producers of the show, and there's this moment that Fauci has, and it's like this Dr. Evil moment, right? That he is just like, he's wearing this turtleneck. He's all into himself. He's kind of, how he does it, how he kind of lays down these weird regulations and mandates and laws and thinks that he is the ruler of the American kingdom. Like, this man, I got to tell you, that was a mistake on Trump's part, bringing him in. This guy is a real winner. Oh, by the way, just the fact that he is part of like the whole, Beagle experiments makes him even more Dr. Evil to me, right? I could see him sitting there with that little cat while he's putting beagles to their deaths, right? So this is Fauci. He's frustrated that some think individual rights supersede societal safety. I want you to think about that. This is a clip from CBS Sunday Morning. Listen to this.
Well, one of the things that to me was most difficult to accept is that we put together a good plan for how we were going to try and dampen down the spread of infection early on, thinking that that was accepted by everybody. And then the next day, the president saying free Michigan, free Virginia. I didn't quite understand what the purpose of that was, except to put this misplaced perception about people's individual right to make a decision that supersedes the societal safety.
Okay, wow. Thank you, Stalin. Thank you. I want you guys to think about this. This is not just about, and they want you to feel this way, right? And I'm talking about the very left, right? They want you to think that you are going to have to do now everything. I call it the Borg. It's a Borg syndrome, like where we have become like intertwined so much that we forgot about individual rights and freedoms, that we've forgotten what our Constitution was established for. Believe me, people do the right thing. We don't need Dr. Fauci, who, by the way, lied to us multiple times about everything from masks. We never know when this guy is even telling the truth. And I'm so tired of him. I don't know about you, but I am tired of this. And I don't know how far they're going to take this. And that's what we're going to talk to Mark Brnovich about, because these arguments entail much more than just the jab, guys. It entails a lot of individual rights. A lot of your individual rights. I know I'm teasing this, but, what about, mandating that you can't work if you weigh too much, or you can't do this, or you can't do that on a federal level, not even as an individual business, but actually mandating, taking away your rights. What about looking at your genetic markers? What about eliminating? I mean, you could go into like some pretty scary places. You could go into some pretty scary places. That's all I'm saying. Look, I have another story I want to just touch on really quick. It's the FBI whistleblower, and he says, that Merrick Garland and the DOJ and FBI created a threat tag for parents over school board controversies. A threat tag. Guys, I'm not being an alarmist here, but if we don't pay attention to this bureaucracy and what this government is doing, and by the way, we have fallen into Banana Republic territory here. I don't know if you're seeing this. I'm seeing this. This whistleblower is alleging, right? An internal email provided by this whistleblower alleges that they've tagged parents and that Merrick Garland is misleading lawmakers when he was asked about the subject during a previous testimony. So basically, he was lying. So the FBI's counterterrorism and criminal divisions created a threat tag that was apparently called EDU officials to track instances of related threats. The purpose of the threat tag is to help scope this threat on a national level and provide an opportunity for comprehensive analysis of the threat picture for effective engagement with law enforcement. This was about parents in the school system. And not only do I have, the AG, Mark Brnovich, on the show, but I have next week, I have Jim Jordan. You guys got to hear what Jim Jordan has to say about this too. Because it was the House Judiciary Committee that got this. And they said this provides specific evidence that federal law enforcement employed counterterrorism tools against concerned parents, like in Loudoun County, right, in Virginia, and across the country. And now Attorney General Mark Brnovich is looking at that same issue in Scottsdale. This is what the Chinese Communist Party does. This is not what the United States of America should be doing. Parents should not be afraid to stand up to their school districts. Parents should not be afraid of their own government. We are the government. We put those people in office, and we can vote them right out. All of us together, working together. That's what I'm going to promote here on the Sarah Carter Show. You and I working as a team, not separately, not trying to be any. No, we are gonna win our country back, folks, because we are going to win our country back together. Listen to this. In the worst terror attack to ever take place on American soil, and you guys remember what that was, 2,977 people lost their lives. Let's just remember that. It was September 11th, 2001. But in the face of horror, brave Americans responded. Many of them stepped forward to enlist in our armed forces. Since then, more than 7,000 U.S. soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice. My husband was almost one of them. Those heroes were a part of the war on terror, America's response to 9/11. They fought for us, but never came home. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation honored these men and women who gave everything by reading their names aloud for the first time ever in a new annual ceremony. Tunnel to Towers is making sure their sacrifice is never forgotten. That's just amazing. Frank Sillers is wonderful. What a great guy. The foundation's season of hope runs from Thanksgiving to New Year's Eve. At least one mortgage-free home a day is being given away for 37 days. How awesome is that? To honor America's greatest heroes. Do good in their honor. Donate $11 a month at t2t.org. That's T, the number 2t.org. Without any further delay, here's Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich. Just so everybody out there knows, because every time I jump into the Attorney General's section, when he comes on my show, on the Sarah Carter Show, we're already talking because we have so much in common. There is just, and so many wild stories that I would love to spend just like an hour talking about things outside of politics and craziness, but you have a joke for us, right? You have a joke,
well,
right?
I don't know if it's a joke. I mean, don't. It's hard when someone tells you to be funny. I'm no Jimmy Fallon, but I mean, I will try my best here. Is what I was going to say is I don't know if the listeners heard that President Biden, during his news conference, announced that we are going to send, before the end of his term, a spaceship. NASA is going to land a person on the sun. And so he said that, and a Fox reporter said, wait a minute, Mr. President, the sun is like 10,000 degrees Celsius. I mean, you can't get within hundreds of miles of the sun, or else you'll burn up. And the president said, "Don't worry, we'll land at night." And so I've told that story, and the sad part, Sarah, is that half the people think it's a true story. I mean, it's because President Biden is so out of it, or whoever's speaking his earpiece. I tell that story, and half the people think it's a true story. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, does he really think we can land in the sun?" No, it's a joke, people. He really didn't.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. But the sad truth is that we would expect Biden to say something like this, right? We would expect this, and it's actually would have been better than when he said, I remember when those kids were rubbing the blonde hair on my legs and it was glistening off the sun, like how they were interested in that. I think I would take someone landing on the sun better than children rubbing his legs. But I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I thought what you were going to go with is that when he started proposing, giving whatever $450,000 to people that entered the country illegally, and then he didn't know about it, but apparently then he did know about it. And of course, my reaction as a former prosecutor was, "Oh my God, is he smoking Hunter's crack?" I mean, because he really doesn't seem to know what's going on.
Is he smoking Hunter's crack?
Oh my God, that sounds weird now that you say that. I will tell you what, though, sometimes I say things and then other elected officials rip that off. So hopefully maybe that one's too out there for someone to rip off.
I don't know, but I think it's going to be a hashtag real soon. I think it's going to be trending on Twitter.
Oh, well, from your lips to God's ears, as they say.
Hashtag Biden smoking Hunter's crack. Just remember that, folks out there. There is no more fun than hanging out with Attorney General Mark Brnovich and I on the Sarah Carter Show. Wherever you're at, you're going to get jokes, you're going to get stories, you're going to get the facts, and it's going to be fun. I'm actually out here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This is my my third day out here. I'm recovering from some kind of weird cold. No, not the coronavirus, but I've been out here working, and it's been like 34 degrees, and it's been really chilly. I think that's why people aren't getting so riled up yet. But there's a lot of concern, Attorney General, with what's going on. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial. This city and Kenosha has been through so much, in the state and our nation. It was ripped apart last year during the riots. We're seeing what's happening now with Kyle Rittenhouse. What's going through your mind when you watch this trial? I mean, it's been 2 weeks of a trial, day three of deliberations. What's going through your mind?
Well, and Sarah, and maybe not all the listeners know that I was a prosecutor. I was a gang prosecutor. I was even a federal prosecutor. And so I've been involved in so many criminal prosecutions. And when I became Attorney General, I had never been elected in the office. And I always spoke about the fact when you're the government, you're held to a higher standard because you can take away people's livelihoods or life, liberty, property. And you can't be the clowns in New York or other places where you just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. You have to have a reasonable likelihood of conviction before you proceed. And as a prosecutor, very often, some of the most difficult decisions you make are saying, look, there's no reasonable likelihood of conviction. And I've explained this to other people in other cases where, like when I was prosecuting gangs, sometimes you would have like the word on the street, or you would know like little G or Ralphie or whoever did this drive-by shooting. But the question was, can you prove it? What are the facts? What are the evidence? And so it's really important to always remember that these are real people. There are real lives involved. And when someone does break the law, of course, we have an obligation to protect society and to make sure that we enforce the law and justice is done. But at the end of the day, a prosecutor, no prosecutor worth their salt is ever throws stuff against the wall to see what sticks. What you say to yourself, and what I say to all of our prosecutors here, is that when you're the government, you don't measure success in terms of wins or losses or number of years someone goes to prison. What you measure success in, has justice been done? And that's always the fundamental question, regardless of the case, regardless of what is going on even in Kenosha. The question is justice being done? And I know as a prosecutor, and look, that was not my case. I never tried a case in Wisconsin. But when I heard the prosecutor in the closing argument literally say something like, well, sometimes someone needs to take a beating, or why didn't he get in like basically a fist fight with folks and punch them or kick them? I mean, I think to myself, like, wait a minute, that's crazy talk, because no one, if you're in fear for your life and there's a mob out there, no one should, quote unquote, have to take a beating. I don't know, I wasn't there in the courtroom the whole time, but the prosecutors seemed a little sloppy and reckless at times. And, the jury should be able to see through that, I think.
I've been talking to folks in Wisconsin, and one of the things that they keep saying, people that are here, residents, are saying, look, we want people to wait. Now it's in the courts. Let's let the jury make that decision. Let's not make that decision here on the street. Let's not destroy our community. They want these Antifa, if there's Antifa kids here, and there are, they want them to go home. They don't want to see their cities ripped apart. I mean, people are really tired about this.
Yeah, and two things, and I don't think I've ever told the story publicly, but it's Sarah Carter, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it. But I remember, just even speaking about juries and different dynamics. So I went to law school in California, and I grew up Arizona, Second Amendment, hunting outdoors and, being around weapons. And I remember being in California, and I told some of the people in law school, my friends, I was like, I have a gun. And they're like, what? You have a gun? Like, why do you need a gun? And I was like, well, first of all, I have a right to have a gun. And second of all, it's, you have a right to defend yourself. And I remember them saying, well, you can just call the police. And it's the old, the police, when seconds matter, the police sometimes are minutes away. And
Right.
So I think that a culture, like if you were trying that case in a place like San Francisco, you might have a different dynamic than you do in Wisconsin. And that's what I was getting at with people that understand the Second Amendment, that understand the right to self-defense. That dynamic's going to be different in a place like Kenosha than it is in San Francisco.
You're not going to have time to call the police when a mob of people are chasing you down the street as you're defending. We saw that in the LA riots. I don't know if you remember that, going way back in California, where there was just no time. And in fact, there were no police.
Yeah, and it's one of those I'm going to tell another quick story that when I was growing up, one of my sisters had a stalker, and there was a serial rapist in her neighborhood, and she had bought a gun, and she used to say that that's what let her sleep at night, because she knew that if something happened, she could fight back, she could defend herself. And sometimes people forget that, and they forget that when we talk about the Second Amendment or these theoretical debates on right to self-defense. One of the things about the left, and this is the second point I was going to make, is that we see this, and whether it's the critical race theory or whether it's the BLM, all this stuff, is they are systematically not only trying to undermine our institutions, through things like critical race theory and 1619 projects. They want middle-class people to think this country is so systematically flawed we have to tear it down. But they're trying to accelerate the process, just like, the Marxists and the anarchists used to do, where they're trying to destroy these institutions. And, ultimately, they've literally burned them to the ground and what they represent, because, they're trying to bring about their, dictatorship of the proletariat. And so, I mean, to me,
and what's the first step in doing that? There's a couple of steps that you could take in doing that and breaking it down. One is taking your Second Amendment rights away, which we see the Biden administration adamantly working on, right? And the leftists want that. And so that's why they're already convicting Kyle Rittenhouse before the world without even allowing the truth about what happened to him to come out. And we saw that on MSNBC, or as like Sean likes to call them, the MSDNC, and CNN and other mainstream networks that are basically convicting him, and President Biden himself. And you take away the Second Amendment, what's the easier? You can transform a nation when people can't defend themselves or stand up for themselves. You can transform a nation, and your First Amendment rights, right? Take those away, and your Fourth Amendment rights, we're seeing that disappear. I mean, this has got to be shocking for you as the Attorney General to look at this, right? And even in the state of Arizona, to look at what's happened here. Look at what happened to James O'Keefe, right? I mean, this is all about the one reason people come to the United States of America more than anything is for liberty and justice, right? That they don't get anywhere else in the world. And we're literally watching it being eroded away.
You and I, Sarah, have talked about this in the past. And, as you know, I'm a first generation American. I always talk about the fact that people come here because the rule of law means something. It means that no matter when people, we just mentioned Sean, how Sean's always kind of making fun of our last name. And, because I'm with AG, and I'm also running for, another office, as you know. And my sister's like, oh, Hannah's making fun of me. So I said, no, people remember it. But the whole point, though, is that you can live in a country where you go from one generation, my family fleeing communism, me speaking Serbo-Croatian, in one generation where people can't say your name, spell your name, to going from being a public school kid not speaking English to literally being the state's chief law enforcement officer, arguing Brnovich v. DNC, the most important election case in a decade at the U.S. Supreme Court, being able to sue President Biden. As you know, we've talked about, we're suing Biden on so many fronts.
Oh,
It's
on
like
the
an amazing
mandates. I
country.
can't wait. I want to talk about that because you are literally at the forefront. And I want all of you out there to understand this, that the AG, he's not only a good friend, but this guy is a true patriot and a true American hero that is willing to take on these leftists the right way. This is the battle. The battle is not in the streets tearing each other apart. That is not what we want. The battle is in the courtroom, and it's being litigated before the public, out in front of all of the American people. We want to be able to reach as many people as possible to tell them, look, this is what's happening to our country. Let's talk about the mandates, the vaccine mandates, the fact that so many people have been threatened to lose their jobs in New York City, cops, firefighters, people across the country, these states with these ridiculous mandates, what they're trying to do to mandate for our children in California, be forcing them to get, the jab or whatever, taking away people's rights. What are you doing on that forefront?
Well, we have multiple lawsuits going on. And in fact, we were the first state. I was the first AG in the country to sue the Biden administration over the unconstitutional mandate, saying that he had no authority to require either federal employees or any government contractors to require their employees to get the vaccine mandate. And one of the things I always talk about, look, we've got our Constitution. We were just talking about the rule of law and why people come here. And that's because our Constitution limits the power of the federal government, and especially the president. And I would challenge anyone. You tell me anywhere in this Constitution where it allows one individual, where it allows the president to require anyone, any American, to inject something into their body against their will. So it is a dangerous precedent. And clearly the president doesn't not only not have that authority, but one of the things we pointed out in our lawsuit is that the perverse irony is that if you enter this country illegally, you don't have to get the vaccine, but literally American citizens are having to get the vaccine. So the Biden administration has really literally created these two sets of rules where, whether it's public benefits, whether it's not being prosecuted for crimes, that if you're entering the country illegally, there's one set of rules for you, and there's one set of rules for the hardworking American taxpayers. And so in our first lawsuit, Sarah, we just had a hearing last week, and the Biden administration, they sent out their big guns from DOJ, and once again, a lot of the mainstream media, MSDNC is not reporting this stuff, but the Biden administration lawyers literally said, look, the reason why we have to do this is because it's a public health crisis, and the contractors, these other employees, it affects insurance rates, which crosses state lines. And I literally remember thinking to myself, like, this is crazy. By that logic, I mean, we have an obesity, crisis, in this country at times. Does that mean that the federal government can tell Boeing or some other, General Dynamics that they can't allow their employees to eat Big Macs? Does it mean that if you're, a defense contractor, you can't allow sugary or soda drinks at your workplace or caffeine because that has an impact on that? And the most extreme example, I think, would be, I actually mentioned this on Jimmy Fallon, so I mean, hopefully we can talk about this in the podcast, but
yeah, we
in the 70s and 80s, there was an STD outbreak in this country. Does that mean the federal government can tell people that they can no longer copulate or get it on with another human being because they're trying to, address that issue?
No, I mean, such a great point.
It's crazy.
But that's what they want. No, but that's what they want, Mark. That's what they want. See, I've always said this from the very beginning. Once we start eroding our rights, right? And we give a little bit away and a little bit more away and a little bit more. And then we say, oh, but it's for the benefit of the good. Where does it end? And for the whole, where does it end? Because all of a sudden now they will start dictating whether or not you can buy a Big Mac or have sex with someone or, whatever it is. They're going to dictate it because now we've already given them that access. I really believe that's how dangerous it is. And by the way, yes, let's talk about Fallon.
Yeah, no, but no. And just so we're clear, I'm not saying Fallon. I'm following. He wouldn't have me on his show. I'm talking about Falla. Failla. Just yes. He's probably he's going to get a big head now because we're talking about him. Make sure. But no, but in all seriousness, I point that out because the absurdity of the Biden administration stance. And just as you said, I was literally sitting next to someone on an airplane, and I was talking to him a little about, because I was talking about this lawsuit. We also, as you know, have a lawsuit against the OSHA. We have a lawsuit. The Sixth Circuit's going to hear that case about the unconstitutionality of the OSHA rules. We have a lawsuit in CMS and their jab or job. So we have multiple lawsuits on this because it's clearly unconstitutional.
And if anybody wants, really quick, Mark, if anybody wants to read about all these lawsuits and get the links, go to saracarter.com. On our website, we have a great story there. One of our staff writers put together talking about the lawsuits that the Attorney General is actually leading against these mandates. So, and sorry for the interruption. I just wanted people.
Oh, no, thank you. I was listening. You and I are having a convo. If I were in Wisconsin, we'd be having a beer right now, or Captain and Coke, or whatever.
Yes, whatever that is. They're big drinkers here, like we have discussed already.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? That's where I think that came from. But in all seriousness, again, I was sitting next to someone on an airplane, and we were talking about this issue, and I was talking about some of these lawsuits we're involved in, and I said, look, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, green, red, whatever your political affiliation is, it's unprecedented what the Biden administration is doing, these power grabs. And it reminds me of that old analogy we always heard about, where if you drop a frog in boiling water, he will jump out right away. But if you put a frog in boiling water and you slowly turn up the temperature, slowly turn up, that frog will eventually boil to death without jumping out. And I feel like the left, and this really started, especially during the Obama administration, but it's accelerated now, whereas there's this effort to transfer as much power to Washington, D.C. and that pyramid bureaucratic class. And whether it's nationalizing our elections, socializing the economy, or providing all this unprecedented power to the president, it's all designed, I think, to make people dependent on a central government, a central authority. And this is because this is part of that leftist, neo-Marxist idea that they will control the levers of power, and they will tell you when it's safe. They will tell you how much you can make. They will tell you how to vote, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's why these fights are so important right now, Sarah.
Oh, I agree. What do you think about James O'Keefe and what's happened with him? Because that's got to be just looking at it in general, whether you like James O'Keefe or not, whether you agree with guerrilla warfare, tactics and reporting or not, like I gotcha journalism. I think this was just so insane. It was so insane that the FBI raided his home for a diary and his cell phones that he had already turned over to basically all the information to the government anyways. He didn't even use it. He's in his underwear, handcuffed, up against a wall while people are in his house, with a battering ram and everything else. This is really going across all lines.
I would, I guess, answer that in two ways. There was a case with a reporter, an individual that exposed a couple years ago the undercover videos at the abortion mills in California. And we had gotten involved in that case because we wanted to get those records. The court disagreed with us. And then that individual was sued by Planned Parenthood. And we actually filed a brief supporting him, saying that Planned Parenthood shouldn't have had the right to sue him because he was just doing his job, exposing things. And I think that it's ironic, it's really hypocritical. With the left, they have one set of rules for them and one set of rules for everybody else. And I know that when I was a prosecutor, and I've told this story even to our prosecutors, is that I was never a big into this whole, we're going to, like if someone's been accused of a crime, that we're going to go knock on their door and bust it down at 5 a.m. and humiliate them in front of their neighbors and their family and stuff. Because the key is that, what a crime are they accused of? And you shouldn't be doing things like that if you know someone's either going to show up in court or they're not a flight risk. And usually you can
like they did to Roger Stone.
Like you know, if someone is not a flight risk, you can, basically arrange with the defense attorney, the person to get the documents, get the information, or have that person surrender. And I mean, there's times obviously in like a gang case or someone's a flight risk where you got to go take them down, you got to arrest them in, whatever in the middle of the night. But normally with, I'll call it white collar types of allegations, you don't see that. And so I think it worries me that I just worry, and this is once again part of this broader narrative of the weaponization of the Department of Justice. And we saw this with Merrick Garland on, the terrible, calling parents essentially domestic terrorists and focusing the federal government's energy on what seems to be political, like disagreements over policy. And once again, this isn't Venezuela. It's not Cuba. It's not the former Soviet Union. We do not weaponize prosecutor's office, and
But
we
we
don't
are.
weaponize our.
But
I know
we are.
that's what worries
Attorney
me,
General,
Sarah. That's what worries me.
It worries me too, because we are weaponizing them. We're watching that. People are afraid. You know, I talk to parents in the United States of America. This is crazy. I remember being out there for the election for Youngkin, you know, and Governor Youngkin won. And I think that's a significant sign that the American people are waking up. But I was out there in Virginia, and parents were literally saying to me that they were afraid. They were afraid to speak up. They were afraid their phones were being tapped into. It's crazy.
Well, and this is what the left does. This is what the far left does. This is what, once again, they do in communist countries. And once again, this breaks my heart. And I don't say this lightly, but you know, my mom, you know, I was talking to her recently, and you know, she doesn't throw this stuff around lightly, but she's talking about like this reminds her of what happened in communism, where people are afraid to speak out. If you speak out, you lose your job. They destroy you. They try to imprison you. You know, the media is controlled by one party, and there's one narrative, essentially, other than Fox News now out there. And, you know, you get in this situation where whether it's on the elections, whether it's, you know, parents just exercising their First Amendment rights, whether it's the media, it's like this attempt to basically stop all dissent. And if you disagree with the left's narrative, you're either going to lose your livelihood or literally you might end up in jail or prison. I mean, this is what they do in the former Soviet Union, what they do in, you know, Cuba and places like that. And it's like, it's not American. That's why I sit there and I've asked, you know, people I know on the left, why isn't the ACLU, where's all these left-wing groups that supposedly care about individual liberty? I mean, they should be suing the crap out of Biden over these vaccine mandates. I mean, and just all the stuff that's going on. And the parents, I mean, you know, we just sent off a letter to DOJ related to this issue about trying to intimidate parents. We also sent one to the Scottsdale School Board because we have an issue out here where you literally have apparently the president of the school board keeping dossiers on parents, like following, you know, whatever. We're still trying to get to the bottom of it. And but the allegations have been, it's been reported that, you know, there's like everything from like tax returns or business records, divorce records, pictures of parents' kids. I mean, it's like, once again, this is what they do in third world or communist countries, and we cannot tolerate that in the United States. The ends, and I've said this to people I know on the left, the ends do not justify the means. Going back to what you and I have talked about before, even on this podcast today, Sarah, is that we have a system, we have a rule of law in place. There are ways to change the system if that's what you want, but you don't do it by having the government intimidate people that they disagree with, or essentially you have social media, the tech companies, and the mainstream media has essentially been co-opted by the far left of the Democratic Party.
It's almost like a perfect storm. It's a dangerous
That's why I'm fighting it. I mean, it is.
It's
depressing at times.
On every front. It's the Department of Justice. It's the FBI. It's everybody, well, you know, working together, and those two departments are intertwined. Yeah. It's what's happening at the highest levels of the administration. And parents.
Just so you know, Sarah, I've got, because of my years being, I have friends that work at the FBI.
Right, me too.
I know DEA agents, and you know, the line level folks, most of them are really worried about what's happening. You know, the line level agents that are trying to do the job, trying to keep our community safe. And I will tell you, they've expressed frustration to me as far as the DOJ priorities. And that's why I had sent that letter to Garland. I sent another one to DOJ yesterday. This notion, you talk about priorities of the federal government, the going after parents or figuring out
Scottsdale, and the fact that they have dossiers, dossiers built up on parents, like to report parents. Is this a form of intimidation where we are just being told, like, just keep your mouth shut, let us do what we need to do, or we're going to ostracize you from the community, and not only that, we're going to report you as a domestic terrorist if you say anything we don't like? How is that even possible that we are living in this, like, it's like a pseudo banana republic state? Like, we're just giving away our freedoms. I don't even understand that.
Yeah, it is really, and it's so problematic. And that's what I was just saying. Where are the ACLU or these groups that supposedly care about First Amendment rights or the right of people to speak out and express themselves? I mean, groups like the ACLU will defend the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan, but they're not going to defend the right of parents to speak out at school board meetings. Think about how perverse that is. And think about how far this country is drifting to the left, you know, the frog in the blender thing again. And it is just shocking. It's troubling. I don't know what words to use, but the notion that the school board would do this, or the school board president, and like I said, we're trying to get to the bottom of that right now, but it, I think, exposes, and we saw this in Virginia, you mentioned the Virginia election, that you have these school boards, you have these leftists that have been unaccountable for so long. And
indoctrinating our children, by the way,
Yes,
indoctrinating our children,
yes.
indoctrinating our society with these leftist ideas, and have totally turned our country upside down.
Well, and that's the thing is I've, sued the universities, the higher education establishment, and, the left has kind of captured higher education. And now through the 1619 Project and critical race theory, they're trying to capture middle-class public school kids to essentially get them to hate the country. And so for a long time, parents didn't know what was going on. And I think the part of it was, as a result of COVID, people were seeing what was happening or not happening in the quote-unquote classrooms.
Right.
And then just the hubris of these school boards to think that they know what's best and the parents don't have a role to play in their parents' their kids' education. I think that's been fully exposed. And so I think that more and more parents are engaged, and I know that. I talk to parents. My kids were public school kids, and so I know that. I know the fears, the concerns of parents, but the left for a long time got a free pass on this, and I'm glad. I'm glad there's people pushing back, and I'm glad that we've written letters, telling DOJ and Merrick Garland that they need to get their priorities straight, that they shouldn't be looking at the parents, they should be looking at what the school boards are doing, and the fact that we're making sure that we're running down and getting to the bottom of what did or didn't happen in Scottsdale.
And I want to be up on that. I mean, I want you to come back on the show and talk about that too. And I want to know what I can do to try to draw attention to what you are doing there. I mean, I know we're going to put it up on our website at saracarter.com, but I want to be a part of this because I believe if as parents, we have to fight this fight or we're going to lose our country.
The key is, Sarah, we as hardworking, middle-class Americans need to fight back and push back against the overreach of the federal government. And make no mistake, the Biden administration or whoever's talking in his earpiece, they are trying to centralize as much power as quickly as they can in D.C. And that's why, when we talk about the Senate, why it's so important, because, Chipman, the ATF nominee, eventually had to be withdrawn because he was so radical and anti-gun, even though Cartel Kelly was supporting him.
Right.
We see what's happening with the judiciary. You have these judges. Here in the Ninth Circuit,
they're legislating from the bench.
We've got some bad judges, and in other places like the Fifth Circuit, they have better judges. And so, it's important. Elections have consequences, and so we have these checks and balances, and it's important to get the right folks in the office that understand the Constitution, that understand individual liberty, that understand that the states created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the states, and so there is so much going on. And I guess the bright side of everything is that if we didn't have Jimmy Carter, who was the worst president until Joe Biden came along, if you don't have Jimmy Carter, you don't end up with Ronald Reagan, I think,
right?
Because the public understood how terrible Carter was and the left-wing policies. And I think that we saw this in Virginia. We see this now. I feel it with parents I talk to. People are upset. They're worried about what's happening.
The pendulum is going to swing back. The pendulum is going to swing back. The only thing I'm worried about, Mark, before I let you go, and by the way, you're living up to your title, Attorney General. I always say this, General, because it's like you are leading a fight in the courtroom, with a battalion behind you,
a brigade, a Brno brigade, let's say.
Okay, a brigade.
Brno brigade. Hashtag that, Brno brigade.
With a brigade, and you are doing the job, that you're supposed to be doing, fighting for the American people. But the thing that I'm afraid of is we saw what happened when the government consolidated power before the election with COVID. We saw the lockdowns. We saw what was going on various levels that really drove a wedge in the American people, right? And made everything so unclear, right? Regardless of what anybody thinks, there was this uncertainty, this bad feeling during the last election. And I really, really hope that we don't see that same kind of action coming from this administration again. Lockdowns, things like that, things that make the election, I guess, less less substantial, you know, where people would question it. We really need the American people to feel secure in their elections. We really need the American people we need to feel secure. We need to feel like we live in our great nation and that we have a voice. And I think that's what people are scared of. They're really worried about that right now. What's going to happen before 2022? What's going to happen before 2024? Will we ever get back to the nation that we were?
I guess I would, we want to end this on a positive note.
Right.
That I am a subjective optimist, maybe an objective pessimist. I worry about things, but I do believe that all of us can make a difference. And I am my heart of hearts, and whether this is talking to my neighbors, I still live in the same neighborhood, and and whether it's folks like my mom and her friends from church that are all from most of them are from former communist countries, that they believe in the American dream. They believe in entrepreneurship. They understand, and most Americans understand, that any government that's big enough to give you everything is big enough to take it away, and that when we centralize power in Washington, government becomes less accountable. It becomes more oppressive. And that we have less of a voice, we have less of a say. And the framers in their wisdom set up this system where power was supposed to be decentralized. And so I think, and I believe in my heart of hearts, that most Americans get that. The people that are paying their taxes, they just want to live in safe neighborhoods. They want to be able to send their kids to safe schools where they actually learn stuff and aren't indoctrinated. They want to be able to provide or have their kids have a better life than them. That's the American dream.
Right.
And maybe own something, and whether it's owning a house or owning a business, something that they created with their hands. And that's what the American dream is all about. And I still believe, in my heart of hearts, that's where a majority of Americans are, and more unites us than divides us. But this left, I mean, we talked about this. There's like these neo-Marxists, the Marxist idea where they want this constant revolution, and they want people to believe that somehow that, they're racist or they're oppressive or they're bourgeois, or whatever their term of the day is. But most people know in their heart of hearts that's not them. And the left is wrong. And this is not the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy. I mean, it has changed radically. It's not even the Democratic Party of Bill Clinton anymore.
Right.
I mean, Bill Clinton couldn't win a primary, won probably one state nowadays. And that's how far it's lurched to the left. And I think that 80% of the people are not there, maybe 90%.
Just remember that, everyone out there. That's what I have to keep telling people. And I know I've got to wrap this up. I got producers and people saying, I could talk to the Attorney General Brnovich for just like the entire show. Like it could just be you and I. We could do like a 3-hour Joe Rogan thing, because I would just be like asking you every question in the book. But I think that we need to remember that.
Could we smoke a cigar? When do I get on Joe Rogan's show? I want to get on Joe Rogan.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to push that out there. I want to get on his show too. I know I want to get on his show too. We'll have to push in that direction. But but the thing is that I think we need to remember that, guys. Look, what Mark is saying, what the Attorney General is saying, what I've been saying, what we're hearing from friends on the street, don't be afraid to stand up. Don't be afraid to say what you believe and why you believe it. It's important because we're letting a small minority of people that are like radical leftist Marxists try to dictate the direction of our country. And all we need to do is stand up and not be that silent majority anymore. We need to be that open majority, talking about what's important about our nation, fighting for all those great things that our forefathers fought for. There's nothing greater than that. And I think if we do that, we take back our country. I totally agree with you. And we stand behind the Attorney General in Arizona. We support him, and we stand behind others who are fighting. No, really, because without people like you, Mark, without having, your fortitude and your strength and dedication of your time, because this is not like, free. I mean, this is Mark's life. I mean, he's out there every day working, pounding the pavement, doing what he needs to do. Without people like you, we would not be where we are today. We would not be ready to take on probably one of the greatest threats to our democracy in the history of this nation. So thank you so much for being a part of this show. And again, I hope you come back, because we got to talk about a lot of things. We got to talk about UFOs. I've got some really cool stuff to talk to Mark about. I'm going to bring Luis Elizondo on. I'm going to have we're going to have a three-way. Yeah, we should do that. And talk about all the latest updates, because there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about on that front, especially when it comes to Arizona. So, so thank you so much for being a part of the show, Mark.
Thanks for everything, and thank you for everything you do, all the work that you've done. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about our border lawsuits, all the stuff that you've done. exposing the failure of the Biden policies on our southern border and the harm that's going to cause every hardworking American. Thank you for being an honest, straight shooting reporter. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. Hey guys, it's getting cold again, and the best way to keep yourself warm this winter, just 2 words, heat holders. Guys, heat holders makes the warmest thermal socks around. I'm not joking. Holders will pamper your feet. These heat holder socks, I'm out there in Kenosha, out in 34-degree weather, and I can't even feel it on my feet. Heat holders also makes hats, gloves, throws, scarves, and so much more. You probably saw me wearing one of their hats while I was on Sean Hannity's show. Give someone you love the heat holders for the holidays. Go to heatholders.com and enter the code Sarah, that's S-A-R-A, and save 15% off your order. Receive free shipping with any purchase of $25 or more. Don't freeze your butt or feet off this winter. Remember to go to heatholders.com and use the code Sarah, that's S-A-R-A, that's heatholders.com. Heat Holders, making life warmer. Well, I've had a great show here today. Mark Brnovich and I can talk your ears off. We really can. I love him. He's a great friend. He's fighting the good fight. Remember, we're all with you, Mark. We're all with you. We're fighting the good fight too. And that's what's required of us, right? We need to make sure that we do what's best for our family, for our country, and for each other. You and I together can make that happen. Again, remember, you could go to sarahacarter.com, go to sarahacarter.com for all of my social media links, as well as sign up for our email list. We've got that there. That way you won't be shadow banned. And while you are there, download the podcast, guys, wherever you get your podcast, whether that's Spotify, iHeart, Apple. Go ahead, download it, leave a review. We read your reviews, and we also read your ideas for shows. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm going to pray for Kenosha today. Let's hope that we're all okay, that we make everything, everything goes smoothly. And let's pray for Kyle Rittenhouse and his family, and let's pray for the people of Kenosha. And while we're at it, let's just say a prayer for everyone who lost their lives. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sarah Carter Show. Thank you so much for being a part of my life. God bless you, and God bless our great nation. Frank Ziller, I am so happy to actually meet you. Tunnel to Towers is a foundation that I am so proud being a sponsor for the Sarah Carter Show. So thank you so much. You know, when I read the spots, I'm looking at the stories of how the foundation started. I'm so moved. What was it that made you realize, we've got to do something. We've got to give something back?
Well, my brother 20 years ago, on September 11, 2001, when he gave his life up while saving others, New York City firefighter that runs through a tunnel, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, with 60 pounds of gear on his back, gets through that tunnel, goes up West Street into that South Tower and goes up those stairs. And along with 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, and so many others, he gives up his life. We needed to make sure that sacrifice and that story was not forgotten. So that's why we decided to do the foundation. He was the youngest of 7. We raised him. My parents died by the time he was 10 years old. So he has an unbelievable story of how he recovered from his own losses. And he realized that every day in life was precious, and he lived it that way. So he died the way he lived, serving others. T2T.org. That's T2T.org. It's only $11 a month. It's up to every single one of us to do our part to help those that were willing to give everything to protect us and our families.